Hey, everybody, and welcome back to another deep dive with us. So today, we are going to be looking at something pretty interesting and relevant for any of you out there who are thinking about the UPSC exams.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, so um, the Bodoland Territorial Region, or BTR, they just recently decided to include Bathouism as an official religion option on like a bunch of different forms. So think like school applications, birth certificates, all that kind of stuff.
Right, right.
Now, this is interesting for a couple of reasons. First of all, it's a pretty big development in terms of like how India thinks about cultural recognition and how they govern.
Yeah.
You know, and also it ties into some themes that we see pop up in the UPSC prelims all the time,
Definitely.
like the diversity of religious practices across India.
Right, and especially, for the mains exam, too.
Yeah, for sure. Current affairs. So the source that we're going to be using today for this deep dive is a great article from Down to Earth, or DTE.
Yeah, I thought this was a really fascinating article.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
One of the things that I thought was really interesting was how this whole thing kind of came about.
Yeah.
Remember that speech that Home Minister Amit Shah gave where he was talking about preserving nature-centric faiths?
Oh, yeah.
Well, this move by the BTR government seems to echo that sentiment.
For sure. It's almost like saying, these beliefs matter and we're going to formally recognize them.
Exactly. And the article even quotes Sangamitra Chaudhuri. She's a professor over at Bodoland University.
Okay.
And she connects the government's decision directly back to that speech by Shah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
But before we get too far ahead of ourselves, maybe we should back up a little bit and explain what Bathouism actually is.
Yeah, good point.
For those who might not know.
So Bathouism is the traditional faith of the Bodos, who are the largest plains tribe in Assam.
Oh, okay.
And they live mainly on the north bank of the Brahmaputra River,
Okay.
near the foothills of Bhutan.
So really geographically distinct group of people.
Yeah, absolutely. A really rich cultural heritage.
Yeah. And their faith is like tied into that place and that geography.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. The term Bathou literally means 5 deep philosophical thoughts.
Okay.
And those represent the 5 elements: air, sun, earth, fire, and sky.
Wait a minute. 5 elements? That sounds kind of familiar.
Yeah, you're onto something there.
Isn't that similar to like the Hindu idea of the Panchatattva?
It is. It's a great observation.
Okay.
And it's really interesting when you think about it. Both traditions are emphasizing this like fundamental connection with nature.
Yeah.
It's like saying we are a part of nature, not separate from it.
Yeah, for sure.
And just like in Hinduism, Bathouism has a supreme god, Bathoubwrai.
Okay.
And he is thought to be omnipotent, omniscient, omnipresent.
Okay, so basically all-powerful, all-knowing, and everywhere.
Right.
Okay, I got it.
Exactly.
One thing that I thought was really interesting that the article talked about was that Bathoubwrai is impervious to the elements.
Oh, yeah.
Like fire can't burn him, water can't touch him.
Right. It's almost like one of those mythical figures, you know? Yeah.
Totally larger than life.
Yeah, and the researcher Faguna Barmahalia points out that this is meant to highlight Bathoubwrai's transcendence beyond the physical world.
Cool.
He embodies a power that goes beyond those elements.
Right.
Which is a concept that you see in a lot of different faiths.
Yeah, for sure.
In different ways.
So we've got this really powerful deity at the heart of Bathouism. But there was this other thing that really struck me when I was reading this article, and that was the Sijou plant.
Ah, yes, the Sijou plant.
So what's the deal with that?
Well, the Sijou plant, Euphorbia splendens, is its scientific name.
Okay.
It's considered a living symbol of Bathoubwrai himself.
Wow.
So it represents his presence and his power.
Okay.
And you'll often find Sijou plants planted in Bathou altars.
So it's not just like a random plant, it's like a direct connection to the divine.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And it's actually a really easy plant to visualize. You can just look it up online.
Okay.
Sijou plant, and you'll see these really bright red bracts.
Wow.
Really striking.
So I can see why it would play such an important role.
Yeah.
Like a bridge between the physical and the spiritual.
Exactly.
So, okay, we've got this ancient faith really connected to nature with this powerful god and this symbolic plant.
Mm-hmm.
But the article also mentioned that Bathouism isn't the only influence in Bodo society. Is that right?
Right. That's an important point to remember.
Okay.
While Bathouism is definitely the ancestral faith, Bodo society has seen a lot of changes.
Okay.
There have been reformist movements within the community, and a lot of Bodos have converted to Christianity over the years.
So it's not like a totally uniform picture.
Right. It's more of a complex tapestry of beliefs.
Yeah, I got you. And that makes this decision to include Bathouism on official forms even more significant.
I think you're right.
Yeah.
It's about acknowledging the historical roots of Bathouism and recognizing that it's a major part of Bodo identity,
Yeah.
but also respecting the diversity within the community.
Right. It's a tough balance.
Yeah,
But this move seems to be trying to strike that balance.
I think so.
And speaking of other beliefs, the article brought up Sarnaism, which is practiced over in the Chota-Nagpur Plateau region.
Oh, yeah.
And I remember when I was studying for the UPSC, I remember learning about it.
Right.
And they both seem to have this deep respect for nature.
Absolutely. You've hit on a really key point there.
Yeah.
So both Bathouism and Sarnaism share this emphasis on nature worship.
Okay.
They both have systems of priesthood, a belief in ancestral spirits,
Yeah,
and this profound respect for the natural world
for sure.
and the interconnectedness of all life.
But I imagine that they're not exactly the same.
Well, right. The key difference lies in their cultural context.
Okay.
So, for example, Sarnaism is centered around this concept of the sacred grove,
Okay,
whereas Bathouism focuses on the Sijou tree.
right.
And geographically, they're practiced in completely different parts of India.
So while they both have this reverence for nature, they express it through different symbols and practices
Exactly.
that are specific to their communities and where they are.
Right. And that brings us back to Professor Chaudhry's perspective.
Okay.
You know, she sees this official recognition as a way of acknowledging the distinct indigenous identity of the Bodos.
Okay, so it's about saying, we see your beliefs matter.
Yeah.
We want to see them represented.
Exactly.
And that can be really powerful, especially for a community that's often been marginalized.
Right. It's a step toward making sure that their cultural heritage is not just preserved, but celebrated.
I like that. And there was another point that the article made that I thought was interesting, and that was that official recognition on government forms could lead to a stronger sense of belonging within the Bodo community.
Oh, absolutely. Think about it. When a community feels seen and respected, it fosters a sense of shared identity.
Right.
And that can be a really powerful force for social cohesion and harmony.
Especially in a country as diverse as India. Like this ripple effect recognition leads to belonging, which then leads to greater social harmony.
Right.
And this leads to a really important question for all of our UPSC aspirants out there.
Yeah. What are the broader implications of recognizing these indigenous faiths?
That's where things get really interesting.
Yeah, think about this decision by the BTR government doesn't exist in a vacuum.
Yeah.
It raises really important questions about what role the state should play in recognizing and respecting cultural diversity.
Yeah.
It's about way more than just filling out a form.
Right.
It's about creating a more inclusive and equitable society.
Yeah. And that's something that we're going to talk about in much more detail after a quick break.
Sounds good.
So hold on to those thoughts, everyone. And we will be right back to dive even deeper into the significance of this development and what it means for India's cultural landscape.
Can't wait.
Okay, so we're back and ready to jump back into this idea of the BTR government's decision to recognize Bathouism.
Yeah.
It's not just about ticking a box on a form.
Right.
You know, it brings up these really big questions about governance in India,
Absolutely.
especially when it comes to cultural identity.
Yeah. It's like they're saying, we see you, we value your heritage, we want to make sure it's accurately represented.
And this could have a huge impact on the Bodo people.
Oh, yeah, especially younger generations.
Yeah, like growing up and seeing that your faith is officially recognized
Right.
by the government.
It could definitely instill a sense of pride and belonging.
Yeah, for sure. And not just individual identity, but also preserving that cultural heritage,
Absolutely.
you know, passing it on.
Right. When a government takes steps to recognize and protect different cultures,
Yeah.
it's making a statement about the kind of society they want to build.
A society that values inclusivity and respects all of its citizens.
nice.
And not just within India,
Right.
but on a global stage.
It's like India is showcasing its commitment to diversity,
Yeah.
demonstrating how they embrace all these different cultures.
And this kind of recognition can have some tangible benefits too,
Absolutely.
when a community feels seen and respected.
Right. It can lead to greater social cohesion,
Yeah.
reduce tensions between different groups.
I see that. And what about the economic side of things?
Oh, yeah, that's a great point.
The article touched on that a little bit.
Well, when indigenous cultures are recognized and celebrated,
Yeah.
it can really open up opportunities for cultural tourism,
Right.
and that boosts local economies.
So it's not just about holding on to tradition, it's about creating a more vibrant and inclusive society.
Right, and it has these real economic benefits.
Yeah, for sure. Now, all this talk about recognition and inclusivity,
Mm-hmm.
it makes me think about the challenges that indigenous communities in India are still facing.
Yeah.
I mean, things are better, but there's still a long way to go.
That's a really important point.
Yeah.
We can't forget that this one decision, while significant,
Yeah.
doesn't erase all of those challenges. There's
Yeah.
still so much work to be done
Right.
to ensure their rights are protected.
And to address those historical injustices.
Exactly.
And I think for anyone listening who's preparing for the UPSC, it's so important to keep that in mind.
Absolutely.
You know, this deep dive is about nuance.
Right.
It's not just about celebrating progress.
It's about understanding the complexities.
Yeah, and the ongoing challenges.
Right. You got to connect the dots.
Mm-hmm.
How does this decision fit into the bigger picture of indigenous rights in India?
Yep.
What are the legal frameworks in place?
Yeah.
What are the historical factors that have led to the marginalization of these communities?
So this deep dive isn't just about Bathouism or this one decision.
Right.
It's about understanding the whole socio-political landscape,
Exactly.
which is what the UPSC is all about.
And remember, the UPSC isn't just about memorizing facts.
Right.
It's about showing that you understand these complex issues.
Yeah, so use this deep dive as a starting point.
Right. Do your own research.
Yeah.
Explore different perspectives.
Think critically.
Think critically about the challenges
Yeah.
and the opportunities.
Facing indigenous communities.
Exactly.
And connect that knowledge
Yeah.
to what's happening right now.
Right.
Current events.
Government policies.
Yeah, and that's how you turn information into analysis.
And that's what makes your answers stand out.
Right, and don't forget about those potential prelims questions.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Understanding the core ideas of Bathouism,
Yeah,
the geographical context,
yeah,
the similarities and differences with other indigenous faiths.
right, like Sarnaism.
That's all fair game.
Okay, so before we wrap up, let's do a quick recap.
Okay, so we started by talking about the BTR government's decision to include Bathouism as an official religion.
Yeah, and we were looking at that article from DTE,
Right down to earth.
and we explored the basic principles of this nature-centric faith.
Highlighting its connection to the 5 elements.
Yeah, and that symbolic Sijou plant.
Right, and we compared and contrasted it with Sarnaism,
Yeah,
emphasizing the diversity of beliefs across India.
and how important it is to understand what makes each faith unique.
Exactly.
And we talked about what it means to recognize indigenous faiths,
Right, especially for our UPSC aspirants.
focusing on cultural preservation
Inclusivity.
and the government's role in creating a just and equitable society.
Now, before we go, we want to hear from you, our listeners.
Yeah, what are your thoughts?
What stood out to you in this deep dive?
What questions do you still have about Bathouism?
Or the challenges that indigenous communities are facing?
Share your thoughts, your insights, your requests for future deep dives.
Down in the comments below.
We love hearing from you.
And learning from your perspectives.
And hey, while you're down there, don't forget to like and subscribe to The Deep Dive
Right, we've got more in-depth explorations coming up.
for UPSC preparation and beyond.
Now, as we finish up this deep dive into the world of Bathouism
Yeah.
and its official recognition, we want to leave you with a thought-provoking question. So, what other indigenous faiths in India do you think deserve that kind of recognition, and why?
It's a good question.
Yeah.
It really makes you think about all the different beliefs that people have in India
Yeah, and about their history.
and how those faiths have changed over time.
Exactly.
And for our UPSC folks out there, I think that's really what sets you apart.
For sure.
You know, being able to connect the dots
Yeah.
between something like the recognition of Bathouism
Mm-hmm.
and these bigger ideas of social justice,
All right.
cultural diversity,
Yeah.
the changing role of government.
That's what shows you really understand the issues.
And it's not just about the written exams either.
No.
Imagine you're sitting in that UPSC interview
Oh, yeah.
and the panel asks you about this.
Okay.
You know, being able to talk about the nuances of Bathouism,
Yeah, right.
how it connects to these bigger trends,
Mm.
your own perspective on what it all means.
Yeah, that's what's going to make a lasting impression.
That's what they're looking for.
It shows you've gone beyond just memorizing facts.
Right.
You're engaging with the material.
You're thinking about the why
Exactly.
behind the what.
Which is super important for anyone who wants to be a civil servant.
So as you're studying for the UPSC,
Yeah.
keep this episode in mind.
Use it as a framework.
Yeah. Think about other indigenous faiths.
What's their significance?
Learn about their history.
The challenges they've faced.
Mm-hmm. The arguments for recognizing them.
And remember this decision by the BTR government
Yeah.
to recognize Bathouism.
It's not just symbolic.
It could lead to real change.
For the Bodo people.
It's about making sure that their heritage is respected,
Yeah.
protected, celebrated.
And it sets a precedent.
Yeah, for sure.
for recognizing other indigenous faiths,
It starts a conversation.
about inclusivity
Yeah.
and preserving the richness of India's cultures.
Absolutely.
So keep those comments coming
And don't forget to like and subscribe to The Deep Dive.
for more fascinating explorations,
We're your companions on this journey.
helping you make sense of the world.
And ace those UPSC exams.
Until next time, keep learning,
Yeah.
keep questioning, and keep diving deep.